Okay, so we were talking about the requirements, and I told you that in the next class we will start from the requirement traceability matrix. Now, requirement traceability matrix is a kind of a register in which we record all the requirements. Now, this is how it looks like. We have a number for every requirement. We describe each requirement in the requirement description column. Now, why we call it a traceability matrix? Because it keeps a record of who originated this requirement, why was this requirement originated, what was the business need, opportunities, goals, and objectives this requirement satisfies. Then which of the project objectives, like scope, time, or cost, will this requirement affect? Which work breakdown structure deliverables will be affected by this requirement? And what will be the effect on the product design, on the development, and what will be the test cases for this requirement? Now, you would say there are a lot many details about the requirement. It is just not a simple list of all the requirements, but it is a mechanism of tracing or tracking a requirement throughout the life of the project, right? Like, naturally there might be more columns which could be added. So, who was the stakeholder who originated this request? Later on in the life of the project, maybe, as I said, that stakeholders keep coming and going. Maybe at a later stage, we find that the stakeholder who requested for this requirement is no more a stakeholder. So we can check that even without that stakeholder, does that requirement still remain valid, or it is no more required by other stakeholders? That might be one reason why this requirement should be excluded from the list of the requirements. Then, what is the product which is going to be produced as a result of this requirement? And we can keep checking whether this is the ultimate product we must be targeting at, or the requirements about the product have changed, or its impact has changed. So you see, these are all the things about the requirements which we must keep a track on. And in case there is any change in any one of these factors, the requirement may be checked whether this will produce the same results or not. That is exactly why we call it a requirement traceability matrix. And this requirement traceability matrix will evolve over time. So you could make it more detailed. You could add a couple of more items which could record more details about the requirement. Or you could make it simpler or more brief. Now, do you realize what is the benefit of this document? Yes, please.
I have used this to somehow cross-check all the contractual requirement that we have.
Yeah, of
Not
course, of course.
only it can take
Yeah, that could.
all the commercial, but also can take all the specific technical requirements. So all the specification and this kind of traceability metrics, it's also evolved sometimes by having one specific by to check all the design compliance.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So you see how important this document is, and this could be really helpful in keeping your project on track. As far as the requirements are concerned, we should not be doing any requirements which are not really useful for the project. That is very important because every requirement which has been given by any stakeholder must comply with any one of the project objectives, right? If it does not impact the project objectives, which are the scope of the project, the schedule of the project, and the cost of the project, then this requirement may be questioned, right? Similarly, it must have been originated by a stakeholder. A requirement could not be there if it was never requested. It has to have a stakeholder, right? And so on and so forth. Anyways, I hope you got the idea. This kind of chart can be used in predictive as well as hybrid projects. But naturally, we don't have this kind of document in an agile project because agile project does not have all the requirements upfront. Now, this traceability matrix could be part of the requirements management plan. And although requirement management is not a discipline as such, even in a predictive project management, requirement management is not one of the knowledge area. Why this is not a knowledge area? Because requirement management is generally not considered the prime responsibility of the project management. So what do you think? Whose responsibility should the requirement management should be? Who was the first person who started interacting with the stakeholders and who created the requirements, initial
Project
requirements?
manager? Project manager?
Yes, project manager does that, but the project management is more responsible for the management of the project, right? But when we talk about the requirements, we are specifically talking about the requirements, the product, right? So, yes, I do understand that requirements have to be translated into work, and project management must be concerned with it because this is part of establishing the scope, right? But primarily, the requirement gathering process had already started during the business case development. So, who created the business case?
The stakeholders?
Business case was developed by a role.
The business analyst.
Exactly. So, even before the project was started, people had gotten in touch with the stakeholders and started recording their requirements, and that means requirement management had started already. Although project manager also gets in touch with the stakeholders as if he can capture the most accurate requirements from the point of view of establishing the scope of the project, more critically, more explicitly. But primarily, product is considered the part of the responsibility of business analyst, and the knowledge area of requirement management is generally considered the responsibility of business analyst. But having said that, we are not sure that in your organization there will be a business analyst. Maybe anyone from the organization might have created the business case. But we are absolutely clear that project management came into play after the business case was approved and the charter was issued. So, project management need to have more accurate details about the requirement. All the requirements, requirement management had started already. Why do project manager needs the requirements to be established in more detail? Is because he has to start with developing a scope, and based on the scope, he has to plan the project and so on and so forth. That means more details about the requirements are required, and project manager also has to look at it. Why we do not have requirement management as one of the knowledge areas is because it is considered the primary responsibility of the business analyst and not the project management. But what is project manager more concerned with? Project management manager is more concerned with the scope of the project, right? And what requirement management leads to is the scope of the product, right? So all of this leads to establishment of scope. So generally speaking, I would say that we will do all the work related to requirements in the scope management plan. Although there is a requirement management plan which will be established, but that will be considered as part of the scope. So in the area of scope management, project manager will create two kinds of plans. One is a requirement management plan and other is the scope management plan. Requirement management plan is only concerned about collecting the requirements and recording them in a requirement traceability matrix. Once all the requirements are expected to have been gathered, we will then be able to establish the scope of the product, for which we have to refer to the scope management plan and not to the requirement management plan. Once the scope of the product has been explicitly defined based on the requirements traceability matrix, now scope of the product could be what exactly is to be produced, and scope of the project would be how is it to be produced. Got it? Okay. So requirement management plan basically is concerned with the planning, tracking, and reporting on the requirement activities. That means traceability matrix is maintained and we keep a track of all the requirements we have already gathered. We can add new requirements, we can change the requirements, we can remove the requirements from the requirement traceability matrix. So that means all the processing about the requirement, which will change over time, that would be covered in requirement management plan, which tells us what to add, what to subtract from the project. And trust me, when I say the requirements are evolving and they change, the product scope is also going to change. And if the product scope changes, project scope will also change, right? With the change in requirements, there might be the product scope might change naturally. It will be reduced or it will be evolving. And as a result of the changes in the requirement, the work of the project, which is the scope of the project, may have to be revised as well. So requirement, just like the scope itself, needs to be communicated. We have to interact with the stakeholder, and naturally, a lot of communication has to go on with the stakeholders for evolution of the requirements. So the requirements keep evolving, and as a result of those requirements, scope also keeps changing. What are the different types of requirements? Naturally, as I said before, this is the concern of the business analyst, and if there is a separate person assigned as a business analyst, even after the project has been initiated and there is a project manager looking after the project, business analyst will also be working in parallel, keeping an eye on the interest of the stakeholders as far as the requirements are concerned. So if both of these roles are existing, then I would say product owner, sorry, not the product owner, the business analyst will remain in charge of the product scope, whereas project manager can now be spared exclusively for maintaining the scope of the project. Are you with me? Okay. So as I said, project means actions, processes, and conditions the project must meet. I mean, that is the work of the project. What all project manager needs to do, that all will be within the scope of the project. And therefore, when the requirements of the projects are being established, these things could be identified. So these are exclusively project-related requirements. Then we have got product requirements, which are most likely and most important for the technical work of the project. And product requirements could be of two types. One are functional requirements, which are explicit product features like the length, width, height, color, material, or whatever. So what should be which could add to the functionality of the project? What are the functions of the product? They are described in explicit form. These are called the functional requirements. But then there are some associated non-functional requirements. They are supplemental requirements, which could be related to the environmental conditions, qualities, and other things, but they are explicitly tied to the product, right? The product requirements we have got, that is, I mean, the functional requirement we have got about the product, about the features of the product, these non-functional requirements are supplemental to them, and they serve to further explain a product, right? So one of the example can be the quality of the product. I'm not talking about the quality of the whole project, but I'm talking about only the quality of the product, right? So how could you describe the quality requirement of the product? I mean, as a non-functional requirement. You see, the very next topic under the product is quality. But that quality is different from the product quality. That is the result of the quality policy organization might be following. Maybe we have a quality policy, or we are certified by with ISO, and we are supposed to be meeting a certain level of quality, and certain actions are to be taken at large by the organization. So that will be a compliance requirement even for the project to do all those policy requirements. But when I say non-functional requirements, the quality is specifically about the product and not about the policy. It is not a matter of compliance. Quality as a non-functional requirement is directly related with the product. I hope you understand my point. Okay, for example, let me give you an example. You said that the track you are trying to construct must be 12 kilometers long, right? That is the functional requirement. Or this track should be suitable for running and walking. That is a functional requirement, right? So all those requirements which are dealing with the function of the product are called functional requirements. Now, tell me, how are you going to ensure that this track you are trying to construct is exactly as per the functional requirement of 12 kilometers of distance? How can you be measuring exactly the distance of 12 kilometers? Yes, Kelvin?
Yeah. Requirement is fulfilled by the time that you're providing evidence that you have met what is required.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, it should be a record from a survey, I would say.
Well, survey is something which will happen after the product has been created. When the product requirement is given to you, how will you ascertain that this functional requirement will be complete? You have to set out some kind of a requirement, a non-functional requirement, which will ensure that we exactly constructed the track of 12 kilometers, not a foot less, not a foot more. Got it? So actually, what I just described, isn't it the description of the product quality? The distance of 12 kilometers is to be exactly 12 kilometers, right? Naturally, we need to ask the stakeholder while we are collecting the requirements of this product that up to what level of accuracy will they accept this functional requirement.
And we also can provide some details on how we are going to do the measurement, what kind of equipment we are going to use, and what kind of methodology is going to be also implemented. All this somehow will be compiled in design documentation. Eventually will be we state that in the, I don't know, in the inspection plan, something like this, or in which we say, based on this frequency, based on this methodology, we are going to have this kind of competent people to do that certificate, and at the end of this will be compiled and I will be referred back to the requirement metrics.
Yes, very right, very right. But you see, you are again moving on towards when the product is complete. Just imagine
before you establish that, and you refer that on the design or
exactly.
on the
So such measures are mostly the quality measures or environmental measures or whatever has to be checked. So these are called the non-functional requirements, right? And to put it, your words into a better perspective, I would say that the tolerance up to which this track is supposed to be, exactly how much accurate should we be in the length of 12 kilometers. I hope that explains exactly what you were saying. So how can I do that? I can say, okay, I'll ask the customer, okay, if this kilometer is say 10 feet plus or minus, will it matter to you? Will you accept it? They will say, no, 10 feet are too much. I say, okay, if it is 1 foot plus and minus, will that be all right? Customer said, well, not really, but you can be a little bit more accurate. I say, okay, up to 3 inches, plus or minus. They say, okay, that is fine with us. So if your track of 12 kilometer is 3 inches longer or 3 inches shorter, we will consider it according to the specification, right? So what we have defined is the tolerance in that requirement that a 12-kilometer track may be acceptable to the customer if it is plus minus 3 inches or whatever the equivalent in the metric system is.
We call that also the pass and fail criteria.
Yep. So basically, we establish that criteria. This is a non-functional requirement, right? But it is the functional requirement was that it should be 12 kilometer, and non-functional requirement doesn't change that. It is ensuring that it is 12 kilometer. For example, whatever you are creating a box and it should be of yellow color. That is the requirement. That is a functional requirement that this box should be yellow color. But what shade of yellow will that be? Which shades of yellow may be acceptable to the customer? That is the quality requirement or the non-functional requirement about the product. So even before, because starting to build that box, I will, at the requirement stage, I will ask the customer which shade of yellow would they like, or I will show them a palette of yellow colors with different shades and ask them which exactly is the color of the shade which they would like to prefer. So customer might be able to point to a specific shade of yellow, and then I ask them, okay, if it could be a little darker or a little lighter, like in the palette, maybe there are one color which is lighter than that, and one color is slightly, darker than that. So we ask the customer, well, if we deliver in these shades, will it also be acceptable or not? Now, it all depends. The customer, it does not matter for customer for slight change in color. Rather, that is not even noticeable. So maybe from this shade to that shade, all shades in between may be acceptable to the customer. So again, we have defined a non-functional requirement where um, a tolerance has been established that these are the shades of yellow which may be acceptable to the customer, right? But the functional requirement was the box should be yellow color. That's it. That was a function, right? But the non-functional requirement is that tolerance. Now it could be may not relate to quality as well. Sometimes there could be other supplemental requirements like security, like safety, like environment. So all those things could also be, which are specifically tied to the product, they will be called non-functional product requirements. And once the product requirements are established, that is the time when the scope of the product is established. And once the scope of the product is established, the next thing we need to do is to develop the scope of the project. That is where the project comes into play. As far as the business analyst is concerned, he might not be concerned about that much of detail. He is only concerned about the broad requirement gathering and to establish a outline picture of the product, what will it look like generally. But when project manager does that as part of the project management plan, he has to be more precise and more accurate. He has to identify the exact dimensions and their tolerances as functional and non-functional requirements, and then base his plan on that. So requirements are required to be there to establish the scope of the product or project, and ultimately all those things can happen. Well, this I was just trying to explain the product requirements, which are either functional or non-functional. Now, when I talk about the quality requirements, that means the compliance needs of the organization about quality, which is applicable to the whole organization, and thus a project manager also must comply with those policies. This is not the quality of the product we were talking about, which was established in the non-functional requirement. It is the compliance to the quality policy of the organization. These might be additional requirements which we must take into account in our project. They are not the, non-functional requirement. They are the compliance requirements about overall quality in the organization. Then we could have business requirements from the organizational point of view, from the strategic point of view. What is the business need of the organization on which this project is based? Naturally, that is an issue which business analyst deals normally, but after the project has been started, project manager also makes it his or her concern, because project manager has to watch over that this project, is it still feasible? As soon as a project suddenly becomes infeasible, we should recommend for the closure of that project to the higher management, right? Because if this initially, when we started the project, it was feasible, and so the charter was issued. But during the life of the project, if the need for a project is no more, if there is no business need associated with this project anymore, this project does not have a reason to survive. It should be closed down. So those are the business needs or business requirements. These are high-level organizational needs, and they frame out the actual reasons why are we doing this project. That what I mean here is that if those reasons disappear, the need for the project is no more. So these are specifically called the business requirements. Then we have got the stakeholder requirements. These are the individual stakeholders or groups of stakeholders, and we may have some reporting requirements about the project work. Every stakeholder may need information in a different format, so they are called the stakeholder specific requirements. These are the stakeholder needs, right? Last but not the least is the transition or readiness requirements. These are those requirements which are associated with the delivery of the physical product to the customer. Or maybe that would include movement of the product of the project to the customer site, maybe installation of equipment and all if that is needed, training of the people, of the customer who will be actually using the product of the project, so that training and smooth transitioning of that of the requirements to the customer would be that included in the transition and readiness requirement. But remember, all the requirements we established upfront, and they are we are not talking about the work of the product as such. We are talking about what all should be there, right? Like there might be instructions in the contract that these are the transition requirements. You have to provide at least training on this product to maybe 10 people from the customer organization. Maybe, you have to move the equipment to the premises site and install it, and then train them, and only then you can disengage from the project. These are the transition and readiness requirements. I hope now you understand all different kinds of requirements, but here in this slide, we did not talk about the work of the project. We just talk about the requirements. What is supposed to be developed? What are the requirements of the product? I hope you got that. Now, for establishing the requirements, we need to collect them from the stakeholders and the concerned people who have anything to do with the project. So for the purposes of the collection of those requirements, we may resort to a couple of tools. And interestingly, as far as these requirement collection tools are concerned and the requirement collection process is concerned, although I did agree with you that project manager has some role to play in it, but because the requirements were initiated in the business case by the business analyst, so generally business analyst is considered a specialist of requirement processing, right? But as I said, if the business analyst is not a separate role, or if he does not exist anymore when the project manager has been given the charter and the responsibility, then all the requirement for future data collection, requirement collection, and all, and using these tools will reside with the project manager. And this is usually the case. We don't see in our projects a lot of involvement of business analysts as such. But ideal would be that business analyst must be there and must be working, continuously on that. Right. So let us restrict ourselves to the project manager. So he should have expert judgment, that is a decision power, maybe consultation with some kind of experts, interpersonal and team skills, because he has to collect the data, the requirements from the stakeholder. So there could be many methods for gathering the information and for for making the team do it. Making the team do it is your interpersonal or team skills, in which we can use the nominal group technique, observation of the general environment in which the requirement has to be fulfilled, and facilitation. Naturally, facilitation is a big tool, because as a servant leader, probably you would be facilitating your team, whatever they want to do, whatever they want hurdles to be removed, so you can help them out on that. Data gathering could be through a brainstorming session where you ask the people to think out of the box. And, as I explained earlier, brainstorming is not just a meeting. It is a meeting of creative ideas where we can think outside of the box. So brainstorming is not just the process where the requirements are being asked and given by the customer. Brainstorming is we ask them, okay, whatever requirements had in your mind you have given, if you can think of any other requirement which might come up in the future, so please give it some thought, do some brainstorming, be creative, think out of the box, and try to identify any more requirements if there could be. You could interview various stakeholders and gather data. You could interact with certain specialists or focus groups, and they serve to give you more and better requirements. Or if the audience from whom you are trying to collect all this requirement, they are too many and you can't even interview them, can't make them sit in a meeting, can't work this big audience as a focus group, then your tool would be, the data gathering tool would be maybe questionnaires and surveys. Like you see, the PhD students, they circulate a questionnaire which they will analyze and then ultimately conclude their study, their thesis. So these questionnaires and surveys are just like that. We circulate, for example, if the citizens is up, they are the stakeholders, right? And I can't reach out to each and every one of them. So how would I collect their needs and requirements? Is maybe through a survey or a questionnaire. And then naturally benchmarking. Benchmarking is, you try to compare yourself with your competitors as to determine where do we stand as compared to your competitors. Naturally, if you are not number one, then probably you have to beat all those who are in your competition, who are better than you, right? Because if you want to improve, you will have to do that. Then we have got the process of analyzing the data we collect. Naturally, we get the data through questionnaires, surveys, interviews, and all. That has to be processed somewhere. So we do document analysis, alternatives analysis, and even the product analysis as part of data analysis. Based on this data analysis, we make certain decisions. So the decision-making techniques could include, we can ask our stakeholders or our team members to do the voting. Or we can establish a more explicit multi-criteria decision analysis that, okay, you allocate points to every feature and you may give different weightages, right? So like a weighted average, you understand the concept of a weighted average? One is a simple average that all the opinions are equal. So we just take an average of them all. But there is one stakeholder whose opinion matters a lot, maybe 10 times a normal vote. So we will give it 10 times weightage as compared to one vote of the other person. Now, I am now establishing a multi-criteria decision analysis where I am giving different weightages to different stakeholders or different opinions. And when I have to take an average, it will not be a simple average. It will be based on the weighted average. That means the opinion of the stakeholder who is most important to us carries 10 times more weight. That means one vote of that stakeholder is equal to 10 votes, right? All other votes might all be one vote for each person, but this is a very important stakeholder, and we have concluded that he is equivalent to 10 people voting. Anyways, other data representation techniques could be, you can, once you have made your decision, when you've done the analysis, that could be mapped on some kind of a document or a information radiator, and that could be mind mapping, affinity diagrams, context and use case diagrams, and there are so many other. And also, prototyping or storyboarding is the kind of a exercise we undertake when we have the requirements, but we want to, convert it into a prototype, a demonstration, a drawing, a 3D model or something, as if those requirements can be confirmed by the stakeholders. So this is called prototyping or storyboarding. Then we come over to the scope planning. So far, what we discussed, That was the requirements management. So we developed a requirements management plan. We put all product requirements and the project requirements in it and all that. I mean, requirements gathering is basically a collection of all the requirements. And this requirement gathering process will be instrumental and pronounced in the beginning of our predictive project, but throughout the life of the project, we could have requirements changing, new requirements being introduced, some requirements being dropped out. So that is what is the management of the requirements. As far as the management of the scope is concerned, we have got these various tools, as I just mentioned to you. We can interview them, we can question them. The audience's large questionnaire and surveys can be used. We could observe their premises to understand their requirement. We could have focus groups and so on and so forth. So you can read from here the various advantages and considerations of each one of these. But I hope what I have described gives you a fair picture. Otherwise, this slide is available. You can go through it in your spare time. So data gathering, as I had explained to you, use benchmarks to generate product requirement. Benchmarking, you remember, it was important because this is the requirement which we are trying to fulfill. What are the other competitors in the market who are working on these same requirements or parameters? And where do they stand? Why am I not the best? I have to compare myself. So benchmarking is really required to generate a product requirement. So it requires best practices to make comparisons, evaluates and compares an organization or projects practices with others, identifies best practices, and so on. So in scope planning, we have a number of tools to prioritize our requirements, which are more important requirements, which are less important requirements. And well, the word prioritization is more associated with an agile project, but you must understand that requirement prioritization could be happening even in a predictive or a hybrid project, right? Why we are more, aware about prioritization process in an agile project is because that is done to kind of prioritize the product backlog, to refine the product backlog, right? But anyways, there are some generic techniques and tools which could be used whenever we have to make any kind of prioritization. And one tool is called Moscow analysis. Have you heard about the Moscow analysis before? Or you used it? Yes, Alexandra?
No, I haven't used it before.
Padma? This is a very common tool. Yeah.
This is the first time I'm hearing this, like, in a word.
Okay. Actually, this is very popular term, and this was developed by Dai Clark, and it actually represents, if you can reduce the vowels out of that, we have 4 characters, M, S, C, and W, right? So when we are analyzing the requirement, we say that we want to prioritize which are the most important requirements. So we may put them into 4 categories. The highest priority are those which are must-haves. These are the requirements we can't miss. They are the most important requirements. Then that is highest priority requirement. Then we have got should have, meaning they are not as necessary as the must-have, but if we do the must-have, we probably have done our job. But if we are left with some time, we probably could do some of the should-haves. They are second highest importance bracket. And if and I will try to do as many of should-haves as possible. But could have are kind of very optional. They are least important from that point of view. But if I am done with all the must-have requirements and should-have requirements, and I'm still left with the time, then I can do those optional could-have requirements. And the fourth category is interesting. These are the requirements given by the product by the stakeholders, but they they have given is the least priority. Maybe out of the 100 people, only one person may like to have that requirement fulfilled, right? So it has a very low priority, and we, in the beginning of the project, we decide that these are the won't haves. We will not ever create them, right? Pre-decided that this requirement is not to be met, right? Or kind of it is won't have, at least for now we think that. Later we may change our point of view, and that is how it is done. A very similar method to the Moscow analysis is the Kano model. It also has four categories, but this is from the point of view of potential customer satisfaction. It is how well we make the customer happy, right? So these are four things. The first topmost category is the delighters and exciters. Okay, these are the requirements which will delight the customer. From the customer point of view, these are the highest priority items. They will excite the customer, they will delight the customer, and customer satisfaction is prime here. In any project, customer is the boss. So naturally, we will try to fulfill those requirements first, which are most important to the customer, which delight and excite them. Once we are done with all these delighters and exciters, then we will look at those requirements which are a source of satisfaction for the customer. Although they don't really make them very happy or delightful or excited, but they would be satisfied if we do this category of work. And if we have done all the delighters and satisfiers, then there are certain items which are dissatisfiers. I can address them in the third category. And then about those requirements about which the stakeholder or customer may not have any negative or positive opinion, but these are my last priority. Probably they will never be done, but if at all they are done, that is because we are still left with the time. Then we have got a paired comparison, which is more likely to be used in an agile project. But rather, I would say these two techniques, Moscow and Kano, can also be used in agile. But paired comparison is a very simple tool that is just like you are having two things compared. You just make a comparison between two requirements and decide that this requirement is more important than the other requirement, right? So if I have got 100 requirements, I will compare number one requirement with number two requirement, and then one with three, one with four, one with five. Ultimately, whichever requirement is the highest will come on top, and they will automatically form into a stack of requirements in a prioritized order, as we do in the product backlog. Then there is yet another method which is called 100-point method, or fixed sum or fixed allocation method. And in this method, it is just like, you might have played Monopoly in your times. Have you? So at the start of the game, all the players are given some Monopoly money, which is a fake money, which is not real money. So they are all given equal amount of Monopoly money, and then they are on liberty to spend that Monopoly money on the game anywhere they feel like. Do you agree with that? Yes, Kelvin? Do you understand this method?
I haven't used that before, but I'm
Okay.
following.
Now, this is actually more applicable. This is very simple method, and normally in our traditional or predictive project, we don't use simple methods. We use complicated methods. We want to address the whole thing together. That's why we use complicated method. These two are the very simple methods, pair comparison and 100-point method. And although they seem rudimentary, but they are very useful when we are doing agile. Anyways, so you all are given $100, for example, or 100 points, and you are supposed to vote for various requirements, and you have total 100 votes. That's it. You can give 2 votes, 3 votes to a requirement, or you can vote 0. No, you don't vote for it, or you vote only a 1, or maybe a 10. So you have to, when you are done, when you have exhausted your 100 points, your job is done. So there are 10 teams 10 members in the team, and all of them had 100 points to vote for, and they have put their votes against the requirement. I will then count all the points given to each one of the requirements, and then I'll prioritize them accordingly. I think this is more precise a method than paired comparison. Got it? So how do you represent data? We could use mind maps. Again, I would like to ask you, have you ever used mind mapping? How does it look like? Any ideas?
They're usually like a spider web where you start with something in the middle and then you branch out.
Okay, that is good idea. But spider web is a new is a good simile. I probably never considered that. But yes, of course, it starts from the center and grows outwards. So, for example, you say the center is the project. Then I say, okay, this project is divided into 5 parts, 5 phases. So maybe we spread out and put 5 circles around the center. And I say, okay, these are my phases. And then each phase is further subdivided into things and ultimately to activities. So this is a kind of a mind map being developed, which is as you said, which is like a spider web, right? But well, I would say center out. It is a center out. So center of the page, you put the main idea and then start breaking it open outwardly, right? So that would be a mind map. This could be a very interesting tool. You could have the apps downloaded for that, and people are using them as a tool for project management. Some of the project management software do have the attachment of mind maps to that. You can attach the mind map to your schedule or something like that. So this is serving to consolidate the ideas created through individual brainstorming. So probably mind mapping would be capturing all the ideas and putting them on the sheet. Affinity diagram allows large number of ideas to be classified for reviews and analysis. Again, we are making a selection to uh, categorize the various requirements. Context diagram is yet another very simple tool which is used in all types of methodologies, especially in the predictive one. For example, you're trying to establish a university. Your university is supposed to be interacting with some, stakeholder groups. So you could have various interests to and fro with that stakeholder group. For example, education community, we need to request they need to request educational services from us, the university, and we will provide them those. And you can see, what is coming in, request is coming from where, and what is being given out. Again, to the industry, we again have the same relation. They request the education services and we provide them. But with the user community, they request the hardware, software, and sport, and university provides that. Government provides funding, you ask for it. And similar is the case with the private sector. So this is a very broad diagram. It cannot be drawn in more detail because more detail will destroy the whole purpose, the whole concept of context diagram. So in the center is your project, and around it are the major stakeholder groups. And how do we relate with all of them? This is called the business context diagram. Prototyping is like experimenting. We do whatever the customer is asking me to create. I draw that on a piece of paper and ask for their validation that is it what they want, or maybe if that is not possible, I can draw a three-dimensional drawing or maybe a physical 3D model. So this is all called prototyping. I am prototyping, and that is good because if I have constructed that building without a prototype, without a drawing, without a model, probably customer, it would be difficult at the end of it if customer doesn't like it. So we want to ensure that customer is on board. Okay, coming over to the scope management plan, we can have a little break, only just about 10 minutes, and then I can be back. Will it be fine with you?
Yes.
Okay, also minded today we are going to sit for an extra hour. Are you all aware about it? And we started late today. I'm sorry for that, right? For the half hour. So we will have only a 2.5 hours class today. I don't want to take more of your time. So let's have a break for next 10 minutes, and I'll be back after that. Start the recording again. So here you see what are the product analysis methods in front of you. They are product breakdown. Now, the interesting part is you might have heard about WBS. All of you, have you heard about it? Yes. Can you differentiate between a product breakdown structure and a work breakdown structure? PBS and WBS. Anyone who wants to explain that?
I haven't seen PBS.
Mm-hmm.
I have worked only with the WBS.
WBS, right? Most of the people are working with WBS. PBS used to be a terminology used in Europe, right? You must have heard about the Prince 2 practitioner certification from UK.
Or,
No? Okay. Just like PMP we have here in USA and all over the world, there is another certification which is equally important and equally famous, and that is called the Prince 2 practitioner certification. Prince means PR stands for projects, IN is in, projects in, CE stands for controlled environment. Projects in controlled environment. That is Prince method, or it is, when it was invented, it was for the software industry. So when they converted it to other industries, they started calling it Prince 2. They have two levels in that certification. First level is a foundation level, and the second level is the practitioner level. The practitioner level Prince 2 certification is considered almost equivalent to PMP certification, right? Now, this UK method is a government method, is an official method, because this was adopted by the government for use on government projects. right? So they are more focused on they are more product related rather than work related. Like the difference I told you between a product scope and a project scope, right? So in a way, I can say that Prince2 method was more focused on product related things, on the product scope. They used to design the whole thing based on the product scope directly. They were not concerned about the work, the scope of the work, but the scope of the product. They had to accomplish that. So product breakdown structure is just like a WBS, but rather than explaining that each branch is a piece of work, we say that this is the whole product we have to create, and each branch represents a part of the product. And that part of the product is further broken down into smaller parts of that product. I hope you understand my point. So you could plan the whole project just based on product breakdown. Now, when I say that the UK-based system Prince2 was very rigid about it, they used to say we should not be using work breakdown, and the product breakdown is the only method suggested by Prince2. But later, I know them from quite a long time, and I know that they have collaborated, PMI and UK government in a way, not exactly that they're not partners, but they support each other. So ultimately, they started because PMI is a standard making body, and this Prince2 people, these people are government body from the UK government. So they tried to kind of get to a middle ground, and the latest standard of Prince2 have all the differences in their terminologies have been reduced, most of them. Previously, they used to say product breakdown structure, and PMI used to say work breakdown structure. Now, even the Prince2 people have started calling it the work breakdown structure. And PMI, in their definition of work breakdown structure, they say that you could break down your project based on anything. It could be the breakdown of the work, breakdown of the product, or breakdown of whatever else can comes to your mind. So both have adopted the same definition, and they started calling it work breakdown structure. But previously, it used to be a product breakdown. But I would say that even the official definition by PMI of the work breakdown structure does allow for existence of a product breakdown with in place of the WBS. You may still call it a WBS, but you could be breaking your project down in a product breakdown fashion. Or you could do it in a work breakdown fashion, or you could do it in any other way you feel like. So they give you complete freedom. But anyways, if it is broken down according to the overall product of the project into smaller products, and that products are further divided into smaller portions, that is called a product breakdown structure. Now, I am not stopping you that in your work breakdown structure, you can't use this approach. You can use this approach, the product breakdown approach or the work breakdown approach, whichever approach you want to. We will still be calling it a WBS, but you could use any of the approaches. But the question is, the common thing is that no matter how you break down your structure, but at the end of the day, at the bottom, the smallest part of the work breakdown structure, which is called a work package, that work package should be work. That should not be a piece of product. That is a condition imposed by PMI that we will call it a WBS. We will accommodate any method of breakdown, but the lowest level, which is called the work package, lowest level of the WBS, will be a piece of work, not a deliverable. I hope you got the idea. Fatma, you comfortable? Alexandra? Okay. If you understand the concept of work of the breakdown structure, the product breakdown, which I am already clearly saying that this product breakdown can be called as a work breakdown structure. It comes under the definition of work breakdown structure. Systems engineering and system analysis are two disciplines which we use in organizations. Like system engineering deals with the approaches, design, integration, management, and life cycle of complex systems in a multidisciplinary way. So it is not a project concept, but it is kind of a system engineering is a way of thinking, a way of doing things. So you could do this kind of analysis, which is called systems engineering. Then there is yet another concept, which is called system analysis, and probably you will find it very common in IT circles. They do know this work. But at the same time, the idea that this only relates to IT or software development is absolutely wrong. System analysis is something which you could be doing in any kind of a project. So again, this is not a IT related definition. So studies a product service to identify its goals and purpose and create systems, procedures to achieve them efficiently. That is the job of the system analysis. Then comes the requirements analysis, which is relevant to what? It is relevant to the requirements we have gathered, right? The requirement management plan actually gave you the complete method how the requirements can be analyzed. But in your product analysis, while you are breaking down things to the work breakdown structure level, you have to exercise the requirement analysis, which identifies, validates, and documents specifications for the project. So once you do this, requirement is analyzed, then we can come up with our project scope. And then we can break it down. Value engineering and value analysis, again, they are two concepts which are kind of really very deep. But value engineering is a mechanism by which we can optimize value in a structured way. That is the briefest of the definition, but this is a very huge discipline. And there are books written on this topic: value engineering, value analysis, system analysis, and whatever. So probably you can refer to them, but for the time being, you need to know not more than that. Well, then we have the value analysis, just like we did the requirement analysis, the system analysis, and all other kinds of analysis. So value analysis examines the factors affecting product or service cost in a systematic, interdisciplinary way towards success with the lowest cost and required quality and reliability standards. So we don't want to fall behind the target. We want to fulfill it completely and in an economical way. Or what do you say? Efficiently. Efficiently. So value analysis is how efficient is our team? How efficiently can we do the work? And when I say efficiently, there's a difference between effectiveness and efficiency. Probably I discussed this with you, but when I talk about the effectiveness, that is, whatever job has been given to you, you can make sure to do it, right? So basically, you are being effective if whatever you promise you fulfill, whatever the job you undertake, you complete it. So that is being effective, not efficient. You will be efficient if you can do the same job more economically, like you did all the job, but in a lesser time or in a lesser money. Probably that is an example of the value you generate out of it. So value analysis is to explore those areas of concern. Well, as I understand, you all must be knowing about what a work breakdown structure is. This is a kind of a breakdown in a hierarchical structure, maybe just like a organization structure, right? In organizations, we have CEO on top, and then the other people, other branches, other department, and until we break down to the individual level. So on a very similar mechanism, a work breakdown structure starts with the name of the project, and then it is divided into maybe control accounts or phases, and then it is further divided into various work packages, which could be even layers under it. Maybe we could have a work package and then sub-work package, something like that. But I would generally say the work package is the lowest level of a WBS. Although work package can further be broken down into activities or tasks, but this is one package of work, which is from the point of view of the project manager, that is the concern of the project manager. Work package is the level he's concerned about. Although when it comes to doing that job, that work package may have to be further broken down into activities, and that would be required when we are scheduling, when we are doing the costing and all other things. So they may be required. But as far as the project manager is concerned, he is so happy with work packages and he doesn't want to go any deeper. And again, I will insist that does not mean that the things are to be further broken down to the lowest level. They are, and they will be broken down. But the traditional definition of WBS says that you should be concerned from the project management point of view about breaking this chart until we reach the work package level, right? And then there could be a numbering system associated with this chart. Maybe the main project is called 1, and the next level could be 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and then further on we can keep down. So the work package you see has a unique WBS code assigned to it. So these work packages, whenever they are to be referred to, they will be kind of referred by the accounting and finance people by their work package number. Because they may not be technical, they may not understand what you are saying. So we say, okay, package 1.1.1 has started. So they would know what is 1.1.1. They'll look down in the databases and see that this is the accurate depiction of that, what it is. Anyways, you can see this hierarchy. This is the general way we look at it. And then we decompose the work. How do we do that? How do we create this work breakdown structure? So these are some of the steps. As you already know that, so I'll not go into a lot of detail. I'll simply read that out to you. And if something stands out and you say, okay, that is not what we do in creating the WBS, then please let me know. So what we identify the deliverables and the work oblique task needed to complete it. You see, here it says we are trying to translate the product scope into the project scope, right? The product, what products are to be delivered, that is identification of the deliverables. And then we need to say what is the work required to be completed as if we can deliver this. So that work and task thing, that comes as part of the work breakdown structure. So this is structure and organize the WBS, decompose high-level WBS scope components into low-level components, like project is broken down into phases broken down into some other way. Ultimately, the lowest level of a WBS is generally considered to be work package, and work package is a level on which the project manager will measure their progress. Their progress is down to the work package level, but the further details of each activity is actually required by the people who are going to be scheduling and doing the cost and resource estimations, etc. So they need more accurate details. At this stage, project manager need not have that kind of detailed instructions. WBS dictionary is different from the chart we have just seen like this. It is not like this. What we do is all the lowest level items, which are called the work packages, we create a list of these, which is called work breakdown structure dictionary. This is a dictionary of all the work packages, which describes the work we are going to be doing in it. We give a code identifier, a number to it. If there are any associated assumptions and constraints about it, so it could be like a table, like the WBS dictionary could be like, and these are the various things which could be the columns of that. So every work package may have a number, a description, assumption, and all that, all these points. But it is not necessary, but it is sufficient to have a basic structure of WBS dictionary, which may not be as detailed as shown in this slide, because this makes a little things more clear, but at the same time complex. Scope baseline, whatever you have done in developing the scope of this project, that is, and requirement is not included in it. That is number one document, which is important for you, which is the scope, project scope statement. Then the WBS, then the WBS packages, and there is a concept of a planning package here, which is also part of the WBS, but it is normally considered planning package is a level higher than the work package, right? And that is that package which could, due to less information available about those details, we don't know how this planning package can be further broken down into work packages because certain information is not available. So we leave it as a black box of planning. We call it a planning package. And whenever and howsoever the data becomes available, we replace the facts with the assumed data, right? And that is the point when the planning package would be further broken down into work packages. Otherwise, we do understand that the smallest level of your scope, WBS, would be the work package, right? So anyways, these are the various components. And interestingly, all of them put together will form the scope baseline. That is the ultimate shape. The scope is approved. And once that is approved, the scope baseline is to be followed. And if we are not following this baseline, then probably we have to move a change request, and as if the scope can be amended accordingly. Don't forget to plan for transitions and handovers. Naturally, that is very important because once you will be, you are done with your work and you have handed it over, you understand that we have to hand it over, but handing over could have more detailed implications, like we are maybe installing it for them, transporting it for them, teaching them how to use it, the hand-holding over some time. So that is called transitions and handovers, right? So questions to consider here are, will the work be new or an update in the business environment? How best the transition of product into a live environment? What about decommissioning or removing old systems? Did you ensure training, knowledge transfer are complete, satisfactory? Scope planning, how do we do it in our agile or adaptive projects? Naturally, here we have got more incremental approach. So we don't have a concept of whatever we have done in the traditional project management. We may not be using all of those tools. We in Agile use very simple tools like this task board you can see on the right. Here what we are doing is whatever small increment we are dealing with, we are not going to confuse ourselves with the whole project all the time, but we will concentrate only on this iteration, and what all is to be done in the iteration, we put it in the first column. And when we start doing something, we bring it from to-do column, we remove it from to-do column and add it to the in-progress column. And then once the job is done, we remove it from the in-progress and move it to the done column, right? So rather than having a complicated schedule and critical path and all, this adaptive method is more like as easy as ABC, right? So simple. It's not very complicated. It is very simple. Then we have the concept of release and iteration planning. I hope if you can get back to the mindset of of agile way of working, you would understand that yes, of course, we have certain backlogs created. We have got a backlog of the product, which is the overall project. Then we have got a backlog of the release. Every release can have a number of iterations, and we have to plan for that release. So release planning is there. And iteration planning is more popularly known because you may or may not be involved in a release planning. If it is there, then we do have to plan it. Otherwise, we will still be able to work directly from product backlog. Now, this iteration planning is the job the team has committed to do in their next iteration would be presented to the product owner, and product owner will approve it. And you can take those items away from the product backlog and start working on it. Just remember, when we are working on something, whatever activity we are doing, when we are working on that iteration, whatever work we have taken on or we have committed, only those work items cannot be changed during the life of the iteration. Once the iteration is complete, the customer has approved or whatever, or even rejected, that is the point the things will go back to the product backlog, which are incomplete, right? So with the start of every iteration, we do a small iteration planning session that is like a mini project of 2 weeks only. So actually, we would be planning at any one point in detail only one iteration. So iteration by iteration, we plan things, we deliver things. So review the highest prioritized user stories are key outcomes, ask questions, agree on effort required to complete the user story in the current iteration, determine the activities required to deliver iteration objective. So anyways, I'll not explain further, but release planning, as you see there, once we do we also call it the outline plan or the roadmap, product roadmap. So release planning is actually where we decide how big an iteration size should be for this project. Because at the beginning of the project, we decide that, and that then becomes your standard device iteration size for the whole project, right? It may not apply to another project. Every project can have a different, iteration, duration of the iteration is fixed differently for every project. Maybe in this project, you have the iteration size fixed to the 2 weeks. In another project, it is 3 weeks or 4 weeks, right? It can very much be possible. But as I said earlier, when you have decided the size of the iteration to be, say, 2 weeks, then nothing can change it until the project is done. No matter what you are doing, your iteration size will always remain 2 weeks. You can't say that I have done the job in 1 week, so I can go home. You cannot, because your iteration is yet not complete. If you have done all the jobs you thought you will be able to do in this iteration, and you have done it early, that is no reason to close the project. We can go back to the product backlog and pick up some new user stories for the remaining part of the iteration which we are undergoing. So this is about the release and iteration planning. Backlog, we have got a product backlog, we have got a release backlog, we have got an iteration backlog. I don't think I need to talk about it anymore. Then we have the concept of user stories. We already understand that to some extent or not. Every requirement could be translated into a kind of a user story. It could be one user story representing a requirement, or it could be more than one, right? But user story is the smallest unit. So in a way, what I am trying to say is, this is the lowest level of the work breakdown structure, right? A user story is actually the work package. Got it? If you compare it with the predictive project management, this is a work package. Okay. There is no necessity in Agile that everything should be connected together, and we don't need to calculate any kind of critical path because the time is fixed. Whatever we are doing is doing in 2 weeks. So there is no fun in having a critical path. We can't go faster. We can't go slow. We will keep and maintain the pace. Yes, if we have done all the work we have picked up, so we can still add new work from the product backlog to our sprint ongoing. We don't have to wait for ending it. Similarly, if the time of iteration has been completed and still there are a couple of user stories unfinished, so don't worry. We will present only those user stories to the customer which have been completed and approved. And the remaining items which are incomplete are those which are being rejected by the customer. We can put them back into the product backlog. In the next iteration, when we'll come down, maybe we pick up those jobs if they are still on the highest priority order. So user stories are not connected, but some of the user stories may have certain types of interdependencies, and those interdependencies are shown like this line here. The blue post-it notes are connected through a line going through them. That is the kind of a sequence in which these activities are supposed to be happening. This first blue sticker must have completed as if the second can start, and second should have been completed as the third can start. And so there might be certain sequences within your agile users, your stories, but this is not mandatory, right? Because we do not have a limit to the time. We have a limit to the time and the cost, right? But scope is variable. So we can keep adding new requirements which may not have any interdependency and all, and they can be prioritized in exactly that manner. But if there is a stream of activities to be done, I say, okay, until and unless the foundation is ready, I can't move on to the next, any of the activities, then probably you could connect these two things as your connected activities. So they will determine which activities are to be done and completed. Okay, let me describe what is an epic. Let us start with the highest level. What is the highest level? Highest level is the requirement. Each requirement could be described by customer in a story format. I mean, when I say story format, that is kind of a layman language. In layman language, you should be defining it rather than defining it into technical jargon. Meaning, it is a layman language and it could be as simple as anyone can understand without any technical knowledge about anything, right? So basically, we are asking the customer to describe it in a layman language. What they describe is called an epic. So every requirement they are explaining is considered a epic. Epic is like a user story, but it is a much larger user story. Meaning, if I received an epic from the customer, and it needs not be broken down into smaller user stories. So that epic will be considered as a user story because that is small enough to be called a user story. But there is another epic which might have to be divided into 10 further user stories, and those 10 user stories will have all the characteristics of a user story. So in a way, our requirement are a feature which is required to be accomplished that could be represented by one or more than one features, right? So these yellow post-it notes are features. So firstly, feature of a major deliverable and other epics could be there. So that is how we differentiate between a feature, a user story, and an epic. Prioritize and define the backlog. Probably we have talked about it a lot many times. We do understand that in Agile, all the requirements are not done in some kind of a critical path or something. Actually, we do, with the help of the customer, we develop a prioritization list for the product backlog, which is the work which is of most value to the customer. And customer will be very happy if that thing is delivered to them. So you basically prioritize your backlog, which are the items to be done first. On the top of the stack, those are the items the team will select out of the product backlog and then start working on that. After every iteration has been completed and team has handed over the product, has been accepted, they have done their retrospective, and now they come back to the product backlog to pick new work for the next iteration. But during that time, during the first iteration, while you were working on the first iteration, customer might have been adding new requirements. So new epics could have been added to the product backlog, which are not lying in a stack as I piled them earlier, but they are some requirements which are uncategorized and they are lying here and there. So what I need to do is I need to put them there at their right place, at the right order of priority, right? So that's how we call this thing as prioritization or refinement of the backlog. And in some schools of thought, we call it backlog grooming. Grooming, just like you groom a bush, you cut extra leaves and extra branches as if it can look beautiful. So exactly product backlog is treated as a tree, and we are constantly grooming it. After every iteration, we go back and we groom it. Grooming means we are all the new requirements we have got, we prioritize them, we put them in the right place and things like that. Okay, when I say plan scope, there could be a couple of questions. What two stakeholders perform project scope planning? You can choose two who are involved in planning. Ang Fan is the project manager, Helen Gray is the product owner, Eugene Lowy is the project sponsor, and D is the project team. Now, out of them, two of the stakeholders, you have to pick for scope planning. What are they?
Owner.
Owner, okay.
And Finn, project manager.
And the project manager. So your answer is project manager and product owner. The correct answer is project team. Project manager and the project team. Why project team? Because in an agile project, the team is responsible for all the planning. Project manager, product owner, or project sponsor has nothing to do with it. Second question, Ang Fen, who is the project manager, wants to give the executive team an overview of the work ahead at the next strategy meeting. Which artifact should he show them? Right? So it could be the scope management plan, it could be the product roadmap, scope statement, or work breakdown structure. What do you say?
Product roadmap, because outline the vision, direction, all the requirement of the project.
Say again.
Product roadmap, because the product roadmap is outlining the all
Okay.
road, the all direction and the quality and all the
Okay.
requirements of the project.
You are right, but the thing is, you must consider this is part of the case study, and we know from our earlier experience and earlier study that this is a hybrid project. We have a product manager as well as the team lead in this project. We have got a sponsor as well as a product owner in this project. So please keep that in mind, that from top down, your project is more predictive in nature, and from bottom, your project is more agile, more adaptive in nature.
So
your answer is correct, product roadmap, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that you should consider everything.
yeah, you're right, because the scope management plan is required.
Mm-hmm.
And the scope statement and WBS.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right.
So, next question is, a project manager informs the project sponsor that the project management plan will continuously increase in the level of detail as the project moves forward. In project management, what is this process known as? The things will change over time. What is the project manager trying to explain? Is he talking about a life cycle, talking about a progressive elaboration, resource planning, or scope creep?
Progressive, elaboration, because it's going to say that there is a progress in the project.
Okay. Alexandra, do you agree with it, or you have a different opinion?
I agree with Fatima.
Okay, and Kelvin? Yes, Kelvin.
Yes, agree.
Agree. Okay, I also agree with you. Okay, our business is unclear on the direction and when features are to be expected for an agile managed project. What project artifacts helps communicate the goals, milestones, and potential deliverables, releases, or other work outputs? So, is it the roadmap? Is it the charter? Is it the requirement document? Or is it the configuration management plan?
Product roadmap, I think.
Okay, right, you are. Which is the best elicitation technique to use when your project team wants to facilitate a discussion with a certain set of users to get a better understanding on how they might use your project's product? What is it? Document analysis?
Document analysis. Yeah.
Document analysis, nahi, it is the focus group.
Oh,
To get, what you are trying to do? To use when your project team wants to facilitate a discussion. Discussion. We don't do discussions with the documents. Discussion is to be done with people. And focus group is the only option where we talk with someone.
What referring plurality?
Plurality is a kind of a voting technique. That is, you say, okay, we will only have a consensus if it is we'll convince everyone on the majority side, and until everyone is convinced, we'll not go ahead. That is one way there is a consensus. Then we have got a majority, that whoever has the highest number of votes, if there are two opinions, whoever has got more than 50% votes, that decision is to be respected by everyone. Plurality is a third method. That is, if there are more than two options, like there are 3 or 4 options, then it is a high likelihood that we will not gain majority. No, more than 50% votes, none of the options could have. One option is 48% and another is 32% and things like that. So that is called plurality, where we say that whomsoever gets the maximum number of votes without any concept of majority, maximum number of votes, everyone else has to respect their opinion. So this is again not a meeting. Plurality is a technique. Benchmarking is a technique. Document analysis is also kind of a tool or technique. Focus group is the only option which is appropriate to this question. Next question, a project team is reviewing the requirement documentation that they are responsible for working on. Which project artifact can they reference to see the connection between the requirement and the business and the project objective? Is it the requirement traceability matrix, RASI chart, project charter, or the scope management plan? Kelvin?
Requirements, traceability metrics.
Good, good. In which of the following situations would brainstorming be an appropriate technique? Brainstorming, thinking out of the box, right? Conflict resolution, sprint reviews and demos, identifying and prioritizing options, running a stand-up meeting, where you need to use brainstorming the most.
Option C, I think.
Identifying and prioritizing options, yes, of course, you're right. Which of the following is an agile method to prioritize project objectives, features, user stories, and tasks? Is it called information radiator? Is it called planning poker? Is it called first in, first out? Or the Moscow analysis?
D.
D is the prioritization method. Good. Your company is designing a game for families. They test whether the game is easy enough for children by creating a prototype and then establishing their test criteria. They create test groups of 100 boys and 100 girls between the age of 3 and 5 at 50 schools across 30 regions. Then they modify and implement the prototype across the country. What process are they engaged in? Are they benchmarking? Are they designing by experiment? Are they doing the statistical sampling or the force field analysis?
C.
C. When we are talking about samples and all, we are actually talking about statistical sampling. What is the purpose of decomposing the project work within the hierarchical WBS structure? Why do we create it, right? Number 1, to create small, more manageable chunks that can be better estimated for cost, schedule, and resources, and that help control the project. Okay. What is the next option? To create a sequence of work that can be used to track progress throughout the life of the project, ensuring the project deadline can be met. Third option, to select the requirement that will be included in the project to the satisfaction of the stakeholders and the project sponsor. So from the point of view of decomposing, look at this. Last option is to draw out potential options to complete the work so the stakeholder and the team members agree on the method used. So what do you say? Which is the right answer?
B. Option
C?
B.
Bravo.
B. No, sorry. Yeah. I said B.
Okay. Other opinions?
Your A.
A is the right answer.
Your A, yeah. But B is also kind of
to track progress throughout the life of the project, ensuring the project deadline can be met. You see, ensuring the project deadline can be met is not your target. Your project is to help control the project. That is the difference between A and B.
because
So
the WSB is also used to prepare the planning. So
but
that's
see,
what I was.
once the scope had been established, then you have the baseline, not even the deadline. Deadline is not the right approach here. What is the project deadline? That is not relevant for the time being. We are establishing the scope, right? So A could be the best option. B has a problem at the end of the statement, ensuring the project deadline can be met. That is not what you are doing. And this is better to help control the project. That is the purpose of WBS. A business is anxious to get a portion of the market creations, projects creations out into the marketplace to get end user feedback and impressions before the entire product is finished. What must the project team establish for their release to end users? Is it a
Option A.
minimum? Yes, please.
Option A.
A, minimum viable product, okay. And sprint cycle and velocity and transition planning. Yes, of course. The best answer is MVP. We are done with this section. We are on slide 55, and tomorrow we are going to start with schedule. I know these things are very detailed and they take a lot of time, but I can't help it. I have to explain things to the level that at least you understand, right? We will try our level best in the next 9 hours to complete the whole project, but I am not really sure. But we will find a way out, right? So thank you very much for today, and see you tomorrow morning. I'll not be late next time. I'm really very, very sorry for today. I wasted your and mine time, and I will not do it again, right? Thank you.
It's okay.
Bye.
Thank you, and take care. Bye-bye.